Hi, and welcome back to Discovering Dataflex. This is a continuation of the last week's episode, and we were just about to look at a refactoring of the code where we make better use of the constants in Dataflex. Because the constants that we use when we get data back from the SQL query are global constants. And that's why if I want to use the same SQL query twice, I have to kind of figure out two different constants. But I realized that instead of creating a constant when I want to use the query, I create one specific constant for each query, and then I can use that in my code, in the rest of the code. So I invite you back in to the episode. Now we want to include this as well in the data dictionary through this C attribute. And we actually did something similar in a previous video, but I'm actually gonna update that now because during the Scandu conference, I've learned something new about these C SQL queries that you get from the SQL. So what we want to do is go into the app source, and we want to create a new file, which we're gonna call include queries.pkg. And in the include queries, we're gonna have two lines, one for each of the queries that we have in our folder. And then we're gonna find the other one, because this one is already including this one. So we don't want to do that because we want to include it in the beginning in one place. There you go. And there you go. And then we want to find all of these references, and that should be one on each. Yes. And now if we go back to the source, we actually want to include this use SQL include queries. And then all the queries that we want in the system, we include once here. And then when we're using them in the application, we just move the constant over to a query that we can then manipulate if we need it. Otherwise, we can just run it as is. Okay, so now we can distinguish between if a query has an attribute template or is a template. Yeah, we also need another thing from this query. So if we go in here, we would like a structure. This one is template, and we're going to use that in here in our data dictionary, so we might just as well add it here. That way this A result is working because we have the T attributes as well. And now we can go back to our edit procedure and make sure that we get these values. So B template, we want here. So if this is a template, we would like to clear the attribute. And if it's not a template or there is a value, we actually want to save it on the local resource. So we want to make sure that we have the local resource here. So we refine that. And as we did before, we get the resource ID here. And then we add the values or modify them. But since we did a clear, we also want to add the type. iType ID before we actually save it. So now we should be able to save a value, and it should be either the template or not the template. And if we run the application now, and I go into a resource, I edit this and say that this is version 0.1. It changes the version to 0.1. The sorting here we might need to look at some point as well. The license says null, but let's look at the version. If we now go back in our template, now the Windows, it still says 0.0. And if I go into our resource here and edit to 0.0, it will save another one with 0.0. Can we delete it? Yeah, we can. Edit, if we put that blank, it will go back to 0, which is the template value. And now there is some issue with the delete buttons because I still can click delete and it will just delete the button. So one quick way to fix that right now is in the HTML list, resource zoom HTML list, here it is. We want to add another attribute or another column. Object, and what we're going to call that then? Attribute is template is a CWeb column. And how are we going to figure out that, and where are we going to put it? Actually, we want procedure onset calculated value, and then this is viref, so we can just update the S value. And I'm gonna spare you the coding and just go in and copy what we need here. And we're gonna start by moving blank to S value as a default, because there seems to be a tendency in Dataflex lists that if you don't set it to blank, it will just reuse the value you set on the last row. So always make sure to do that. And then we have our attribute ID from our table, which is the current row we're on. So that's how we know that. Into the attribute ID, we could, of course, we don't have to create a variable. We could just use this one up here. We could clean that up a bit even more. Nice. And now we are calling attribute is or has template, the procedure we just used in the data dictionary. Attribute is or has template. So we get information if it has a template, and then we can return is template. Where do we want to put this? Of course, we want to put it in the class here. So we're gonna do that. and just store it here. And now we want to go back into our CSS, because now if we have a button that is template and HTML button red, or is template and HTML label. So if it's a delete button, yeah, we don't want to put it here actually. We want to put it inside of the row. So the class, here we go. So in the row, if the row has a red button and it is a template, then we want to hide it. And if it is a template and it's a HTML label, we want to make that bold. So let's see how that works. Resource. Yeah, now we can see that this is bold, the license and the version. And even if we update the version, it's still bold. And you can see there are no delete buttons, so we cannot by mistake click any delete buttons here. I see. When we click the license, it selects the license and then it updates the header. That's also a bit nasty, because if we go here and edit, now we are editing the template. We might need to prevent that somehow. That should be pretty simple to do just by making this non-DB aware list. So if we have an HTML list, this one, but we're using the data dictionary right now to actually fill the list. So it is DB aware. Yeah, I have to think about that and get back to you. Or maybe you have an answer for how to avoid the header from shifting. Yeah, didn't say it was going to be easy. So let's see. Now we only have a few things left to look at here. Let's see if we can figure this out. Yeah, on element click. Yeah, maybe we can do something like this. If we do an element click, we want to get the resource ID. And then do something like that. Could that work? Because I believe that every time we click on a row, we call this element click. I'm not sure. No, that's not. On row click, of course. Yeah, we're gonna add a procedure on row click. This is a bit of a hack, I think. Web get integer iResource ID, and then we clear the resource header and make sure that we are on our correct resource header. So let's see if that helps. I don't know. I probably need to set pb allow row click or something. Set pb allow row click. No. So if we click on this one, no, it's still. Set a breakpoint here, row click, F1, see web list. PB, yeah, we need to set this PB server. PB server to true. Let's run this again. Let's hide the breakpoint. And now if we click on this one, it's gonna stay there. Okay, it's a bit of a hack, but it actually works. So we don't have to end up in a situation where we all of a sudden change the header of the view here. There might be better ways to do this to avoid switching headers. Probably some setting in the data dictionary or something that you can lock the value or whatever. But it works for now, and this is what we want to go with. So that was all for this video, and if you're curious to see what happens next, stick around, subscribe, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.